He has a real family and you just have a dog. My dad laughed after telling me to give my paid-off house to my brother, so I said me and my dog are more real than his family will ever be. I'm 32, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one in the family. The dog guy, as my brother so lovingly puts it. Not the athlete, not the dad, not the one with the family name to carry on. I'm the guy who shows up to barbecues with craft beer and a golden retriever named Max. While my brother Brandon shows up late smelling like cheap cologne and holding a new baby like it's a winning lottery ticket. Guess which one of us gets the applause? I've always been a bit of an outlier. Grew up in the same small Pennsylvania town as the rest of my family, but I was the one who moved into tech instead of construction like Dad wanted. I bought my own place by the time I was 29. Not some fixer-upper either. A modest 3-bedroom house with a fenced yard, finished basement, and a kitchen. Even my mom admits is Pinterest-worthy. I saved for it, planned for it, worked 12-hour days for it. And while it's not, it's mine. Paid off too. No mortgage hanging over my head, just max some plants. And peace. Brandon is 3 years younger than me, and if you ask my parents, he's the golden boy. Always has been. The kid could spill grape juice on the white carpet and somehow end up with dessert. He was the first to get a football scholarship, which he lost. The first to get married, which was rushed. And the first to have a baby, which may or may not have been intentional. Still, Mom and Dad act like he's building Rome while I'm sitting in a cave playing video games. Never mind that his credit score is probably the same as his bowling average. I never minded the imbalance too much. I had my career, my dog, my house. I didn't need their validation. But something shifted after Brandon's daughter was born last spring. Suddenly, every conversation started circling back to family legacy and planning for the future. I started getting subtle suggestions that maybe I didn't need so much space. That a man like me, single, childless, unburdened, should think about supporting the real family. It started small. A comment here, a joke there, the kind of stuff you're supposed to laugh off. Then came the barbecue. It was one of those early summer days where the sun bakes the pavement and your t-shirt clings to your back before you've even taken a sip of lemonade. We were gathered at my parents' backyard for Dad's birthday. Burgers, cornhole, cheap beer, the usual suspects. Brandon's wife Kelsey was there with the baby, looking smug as ever in her oversized sunglasses and a tank top that said, Mama Bear. She's always had that air of barely concealed superiority, like marrying into the family was an act of charity on her part. My mom adores her, says she brings balance to Brandon's wildness. I think she brings entitlement and target receipts. The whole afternoon had a weird vibe. My mom kept bringing me plates of food I didn't ask for, and Brandon kept walking around my dog like Max was a ticking time bomb. Kelsey wrinkled her nose every time someone mentioned dogs and babies in the same sentence. I kept to myself, mostly sipping my drink and trying not to look at the overdone steaks on the grill. Then my dad clinked a fork against his beer bottle. All right, gather round, he called, grinning like the mayor of Dysfunction Village. Got a little family announcement to make. We all gathered near the patio, standing in clumps. I remember Max sat down next to me and looked up like he could sense the tension in my shoulders. I've been thinking, Dad said, raising his arms like he was about to deliver the 10 Commandments. About the future, about what we leave behind. Brandon puffed up beside him, holding the baby like he was expecting a medal. And I realized Dad went on, we've got to think long-term. Legacy, stability. What kind of world we're building for this little one? He nodded toward his granddaughter like she was the second coming. Then he turned to me. Darren, you've done well for yourself. Got a nice house, no debts, smart with your money. And you've got what? A dog. He laughed. So did Brandon. So did most of them. Even Mom tried to hide a smile behind her cup. I didn't laugh. So Dad said, clearing his throat, we were thinking it only makes sense for you to help out your brother. Maybe let him move into your place. You've got more than enough space and they need room to grow their family. You could always get a condo or one of those townhouses near the park. You like walking the dog? Right? Silence. I looked around. No one was saying anything. No one was stopping him. It was like they were all in on it. I opened my mouth, closed it. My jaw felt tight like I'd been grinding my teeth all night. And of course, Dad continued, we're not saying you're giving it away. Just doing what's right. Being the bigger man. You don't need all that room, Darren. You don't even have anyone. Brandon's building a life. A real future. He turned to the rest of the group and said, chuckling, he's a real man now. He's got a wife, a baby, a future. Darren's got what? A dog. Laughter. Full blown this time. My mom covered her mouth like it was scandalous, but funny. Kelsey smirked behind her sunglasses. Brandon slapped my back, saying, "Come on, man. It's not a big deal. You know it makes sense." And that's when I realized they thought I'd just say yes. They thought I'd hand over the keys and say, "Of course, brother. Take it. Build your future. I'll go fetch a one-bedroom and a leash." But I didn't. I smiled, and I reached into the folder I'd brought with me because I'd seen this coming weeks ago. The offhand remarks, the strange comments, the weird energy. I pulled out the document, placed it gently on the patio table, and said, "Funny you'd say that, Dad. Want to see the DNA test? Your future is built on silence. Real silence, the kind that makes the air feel thicker." Brandon blinked. Kelsey froze. My mom's cup tilted in her hand. I leaned back in my chair, heart thudding like a war drum in my chest, and waited. Because this wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about everything, and they had no idea what I was about to show them. I didn't plan to ruin my dad's birthday. Let me get that out of the way first. I came to that barbecue with the folder as a precaution, not a weapon. I knew the atmosphere had been shifting, and I wanted to be prepared not to start a war. But the second those words left my father's mouth, "You've got what? A dog?" I realized there was no salvaging this illusion of family unity. Not anymore. When I laid the folder on the table and mentioned the DNA test, you could have heard a pin drop. The air changed. It felt electric, like right before a lightning strike. I wasn't even sure which part of that sentence rattled them more, the mention of DNA or the calm way I said it, like I'd been sitting on a loaded gun this whole time. Brandon's face went through 3 shades of red in as many seconds. Kelsey froze, lips parted mid-sip like she was taking in oxygen for the first time. My mother looked at the folder like it might explode. "What the hell are you talking about?" Brandon asked, his voice tight. I didn't answer. Not right away. I watched him squirm. I watched Kelsey's sunglasses tilt just enough to reveal her eyes darting between the document and me. I wanted them to feel it, the weight of what they'd just done, the gall it took to mock me, to try and take from me while hiding something like this. My father cleared his throat. "Darren, what is this?" I finally spoke. That's a paternity test. From a private lab. Took a few weeks. Took some digging, too. But what can I say? Tech nerds like me enjoy a good mystery." Mom's hands went to her mouth. "Darren, please tell me you didn't." "I did," I said, voice steady. "And the results are in that folder. If you want to know who fathered your granddaughter, Dad, go ahead. Open it." Brandon stood up so fast his chair screeched. "You're insane. You actually stalked my family and got DNA tested behind our backs. Are you hearing up late to every family event who once borrowed $5,000 from Mom and never paid it back, who's been bailed out of 2 DUI arrests, and who still somehow gets treated like the chosen son? And you think I'm the crazy one?" Kelsey found her voice then. "This is harassment. That's illegal. It's not illegal if the sample is voluntarily provided," I said, cutting her off. "Your daughter's hairbrush from when you visited my house 2 months ago, left in the guest bathroom. I'm not proud of it, but after the things I found on Brandon's phone..." Brandon lunged, or he tried to anyway. Dad and Uncle Mike jumped in to hold him back. He was red-faced, trembling, shouting something about lawsuits and ruining lives. I stayed seated. I didn't flinch, because I hadn't ruined anything. They had. And I was done letting them pretend otherwise. That moment, the eruption, the accusations, the silent judgment from the rest of the family. It should have been the breaking point. You'd think after something like that, people would step back, reflect, try to understand how things got to this point. But that's not what happened. It got worse. After the barbecue exploded into chaos, I grabbed Max, left the folder behind, and walked out. I didn't look back. Didn't answer my phone for 2 days. I needed space. I needed air. But I should have known they wouldn't let it go. The first call was from my mom. I didn't answer. Then a voicemail came in. "Darren, honey, we need to talk." That was unnecessary. "You embarrassed everyone. Just call me, please." Then another, and another. By the 4th message, her tone had changed. "I don't know what you think you proved, but this has gone too far. Brandon's your brother. That baby is your niece. Whether or not..." There was a pause. "You had no right. This isn't you." "Oh, but it was me, just not the version they were used to." Brandon never called. He didn't need to. Kelsey did the honors texting me something that I won't quote word for word, but the gist was, I was a sick freak, jealous and bitter because no one wanted to build a future with a guy who plays fetch with a dog instead of raising a family. I didn't reply, not even a period, but I wasn't done either. See the test? That wasn't even the full story. The truth was, I'd only gotten suspicious after Brandon started spending more time at my house. At first, it seemed normal him swinging by asking about renovations, hinting at how perfect the layout was for a kid. I brushed it off as curiosity, but then he got pushy, suggesting how empty my life looked, how guys like me don't really need all that space. He even made a joke about how the place was wasted on someone without a family. That's when I started watching more closely. Noticing the way he and Kelsey talked over each other, the way she looked uncomfortable every time he mentioned their future, the way she hesitated before calling him the baby's father. At first I thought she was cheating, but then I got a hold of Brandon's old phone. He left it at my place, once cracked screen barely functioning. Told me to toss it. Curiosity got the better of me. I charged it, powered it on, and scrolled through what I could salvage. What I found was a string of saved screenshots, messages, some explicit, some just weird. Conversations with multiple women, most of it recent, all of it post-baby. But one thread stood out. It was a conversation with someone saved as M. The tone was different, nervous, emotional, references to the timing and not telling anyone. At one point, Brandon said, "Don't worry, the baby looks enough like me. No one's going to ask questions." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't trying to play detective. I just couldn't ignore what was right in front of me anymore. So I hired a discreet lab, paid for express results, and waited. And when the results came back saying there was a 0% chance Brandon was the biological father. Yeah, that folder became my insurance policy. But here's where the real twist starts. After I dropped the bomb at the barbecue and disappeared, they didn't crumble. They circled the wagons. Suddenly I was the villain. The calls from Mom turned colder. She accused me of humiliating Brandon, of ruining a child's life, of poisoning the family with my obsession with fairness. She didn't ask if the test was real. She didn't want to know. She just wanted to keep the illusion alive. Then came the final straw. I got a certified letter in the mail. At first I thought it might be legal, a cease and desist. Maybe Brandon trying to flex with some empty lawsuit threat. But no, it was from my parents. It was a formal request asking me to transfer ownership of my house to Brandon and Kelsey in the spirit of reconciliation. Framed as a family agreement signed by them both. They wanted me to gift them my house, after everything. I stared at the paper so long Max started whining. Like even he knew something was wrong. I laughed. A low, disbelieving laugh that turned into a silent shake of the head. That's when I knew we were past the point of no return. They didn't just want to pretend nothing happened. They wanted to reward the lie, reward the betrayal, and punish the one person who had the audacity to reveal the truth. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in my own folder. A different one. A growing collection of receipts, documents, and screenshots. Because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. And if they wanted a war, they were going to get one. If you'd asked me a year ago what rock bottom looked like, I probably would have pictured something out of a movie. Empty pizza boxes, job loss, maybe sitting on the floor of a dim apartment with my dog, and a bottle of whiskey staring out a rain-streaked window. Something poetic. Reality was much quieter. It looked like a breakfast table with 2 chairs, one of them never used. It sounded like the echo of silence in a house that suddenly felt too big. It felt like walking Max on a crisp morning, passing families in the park and pretending I didn't hear a child ask their mom, "Why is that man always alone?" It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, heavy. After the letter arrived, after the calls and texts turned venomous, the distance between me and my family went from uncomfortable to undeniable. I didn't attend 4th of July. I skipped my mom's birthday for the first time in my life. I didn't even get a Thanksgiving invite. To be clear, they didn't forget to invite me. They just didn't. I became the ghost of the family. Not exiled exactly, just quietly removed. Photos disappeared from Mom's Facebook. Group chats that once buzzed with updates and plans fell silent on my end. Even Uncle Mike, who'd always been neutral, stopped calling. I went from the quiet one to the problem. And it hurt. It hurt more than I wanted it to. Because no matter how strong I acted, no matter how justified I felt, they were still my family. And deep down, I'd always held on to the hope that one day, someday, they'd finally see me. Finally realize that I wasn't a placeholder or a backup plan. That I had value. That my life wasn't something to be traded for someone else's convenience. But they didn't. They doubled down. Brandon posted photos of his beautiful family every week. Kelsey's captions became increasingly performative. So blessed to raise this little one with the strongest man I know. Family is everything. Thankful for the real ones. And every time I saw those posts, I'd think of the paternity test, of the silent knowledge I carried like a stone in my pocket. But I said nothing. I stayed silent. And for a while, that silence turned inward. I stopped cooking, stopped inviting friends over, stopped going out unless Max needed a walk. Even work started to slip. I work remotely as a software engineer, mostly contract-based gigs. Normally, I'm disciplined. Up at 8 o'clock, coffee code finish, by 5 o'clock, walk, Max dinner, bed. But after the barbecue, my schedule cracked. I'd wake up at noon, work until 3 a.m., miss meetings, push deadlines. Clients started ghosting me. One didn't renew their contract. For the first time since buying my home, I felt financially anxious. Not broke, but shaky. The kind of instability that makes you glance at your bank app a few times a day just to check. I was unraveling slowly, not all at once, like a sweater pulled by a loose thread. And no one noticed. No one called. No one asked how I was doing. Except Max. Max noticed. Dogs always do. He stayed close, slept beside me even when I pulled all-nighters, licked my hand when I sat too long without moving, barked at the door when I forgot to lock it, stared at me with that unwavering loyalty that makes you feel like maybe, just maybe, you matter to someone. It was a rainy Tuesday in October when everything changed. I was out walking, Max hoodie up, coffee in hand, headphones in, music low. We were cutting through the park when he suddenly pulled hard to the left. Not aggressive, just urgent. I looked up and saw a little girl no older than 4, standing alone by the sandbox crying. No adult in sight. Max approached her, gently, tail wagging. She looked down at him, startled, then wrapped her arms around his neck like he was a life raft. I rushed over. Hey, it's okay, I said softly. Where's your mom or dad? She sniffled and pointed to the far edge of the park where a woman was frantically scanning the area, calling a name. I led the girl back, Max walking between us. When the mother saw us, she sprinted over, scooped her daughter up, and started crying herself. I stayed for a minute to make sure they were okay. The mother thanked me again and again, said her daughter had followed a balloon and wandered off while she was distracted with a stroller, said Max was a hero. I didn't think much of it, just glad it ended okay. But a few days later, I got a message on LinkedIn from someone who'd been sitting nearby at the park that day. She'd recognized me from a tech panel I'd been on earlier that year. You were the guy with the dog, right? I'm actually looking for a lead engineer for a new platform we're building. Mind chatting? That chat turned into a meeting. That meeting turned into an offer. And that offer came with stock options, flexible hours, and a salary higher than anything I'd ever made before. Suddenly, the fog began to lift. I cleaned the house, I showered before noon, I opened my windows, I cooked actual food, and I stopped checking my phone for texts that were never coming. Instead, I started checking in with myself. I made a list of things I'd always wanted to do but never got around to. Learn to play guitar, take Max on a road trip, finish the novel I started in college, join a local hiking group, redo the backyard with a fire pit. One by one, I started crossing them off. I bought a used acoustic guitar from a pawn shop and strummed until my fingers blistered. I drove Max up the coast for a weekend and watched him chase waves like he'd been waiting for that moment his whole life. I pulled out the dusty novel draft and actually began rewriting it word by word. And I made new friends, real ones. People who didn't care that I wasn't a dad or a husband or the golden child. People who liked me. The rise wasn't loud, there was no applause, no viral redemption arc. It was quiet, but it was steady. And somewhere along the way I realized I didn't need my family's validation. I didn't need their approval or their praise. I didn't even need their apology. Because I had me. I had Max. I had a career I built with my own hands. I had a home that no one could take from me. And for the first time in my life, I truly felt whole. That doesn't mean I forgot. No, the pain was still there. The betrayal, the unfairness, the weight of years spent being the second choice. But I wasn't carrying it anymore. I was just aware of it like a scar. Not something to hide, but something to remember. And just when I thought I'd put it all behind me, just when I thought maybe I'd finally moved on, I got a knock on the door. A soft, hesitant knock. Max barked once, then looked at me. I peeked through the window and saw something that made my stomach twist. It was my dad, and he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Brandon, and behind him was Kelsey. No baby in sight, no smiles. Just faces worn with tension, shame, and something else I couldn't quite name. I opened the door, and before I could say a word, my dad said 5 words I never expected to hear. Darren, we need your help. I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other gently resting on Max's collar. His growl was low, cautious, but I gave his head a soft pat and nodded. "It's okay, buddy." He looked up at me, then back at them as if silently asking, "Are you sure I wasn't?" But I opened the door wider anyway. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. My voice was calm, maybe too calm. The kind of calm that comes after months of silence, solitude, and sharp clarity. The kind of calm that unnerves people who expect you to still be the version of yourself they used to control. They filed in awkwardly. Dad first, then Brandon, then Kelsey. They moved like people entering a stranger's house, not the one they once tried to take from me. Kelsey glanced around like she was expecting traps in the corners. Brandon wouldn't meet my eyes. And my dad, he just looked tired. I didn't offer them drinks. I didn't ask them to sit. I let the silence settle. "Okay," I finally said, crossing my arms. "You needed my help." Kelsey opened her mouth, but Dad put a hand up. "Let me start." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He took a breath, one of those deep, performative sighs that people use when they want to pretend they're carrying the weight of the world. "Things have changed," he said slowly, "since that day." I tilted my head. "You mean the day you publicly suggested I give away my house like a party favor and then laughed at me in front of the whole family?" Brandon flinched. Kelsey looked away. Dad winced but nodded. "Yes, that day. And the day I dropped a paternity test on your birthday barbecue?" A longer silence. He cleared his throat. "Yes, that too." I waited. Let it hang. He finally continued. "We didn't handle that right. You were justified in some of what you did. Some. I didn't flinch. I didn't show a thing. Kelsey finally spoke. "Brandon and we've separated." I turned to her. "Because of the DNA test?" She nodded. "Among other things." Brandon bristled. "It wasn't even proven that I'm not the father." I raised a brow. "You mean besides the lab-confirmed notarized results?" He scowled but said nothing. "We tried to move past it," Kelsey said, voice quieter. "But once you put that truth out there, everything cracked. My parents started asking questions. Brandon stopped coming home some nights. I finally had enough." "So you left him," I said flatly. She nodded. 3 weeks ago, and now you're here. Together." My dad stepped back in. "This isn't about their marriage. It's about what came after." I narrowed my eyes. "What do you mean?" He looked genuinely uncomfortable now. "We might have gotten involved with someone. Someone we thought could help clean things up." I stayed very, very still. "Who?" I asked. Brandon finally spoke, his voice tight. "A guy named Curtis. Some legal guy. Said he could help us challenge the validity of your paternity test and set the record straight. Said he could fix the public fallout." I stared at them. "And what does fix mean?" I asked, voice dropping. Brandon hesitated. Then he offered to create a different set of results. I blinked. "You mean forge a fake DNA test?" Silence. "You were going to falsify results to save face?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. Dad raised a hand. "We didn't go through with it." "Why not?" I snapped. "Because it was wrong or because it didn't work?" His eyes met mine, finally steady. "Because he turned on us." I narrowed my gaze. "Explain." Dad let out another sigh. "He was shady from the start, but desperate times, you know. Curtis said he had connections, could get records revised. But after we gave him some money, how much I cut in." He hesitated. 10,000. I whistled. "So you were willing to spend 10 grand to erase the truth I uncovered, but not a dime to apologize for what you did?" Brandon stepped forward suddenly. "We didn't come here to get a lecture, Darren." I stared him down. "Then why did you come here? Because it sounds like you got conned, and you want me to fix it." Kelsey's voice cracked. "He's threatening to release stuff. Emails, messages, personal info about all of us." Dad nodded. "He said if we didn't pay more, he'd release everything to the press, local media, even the school board. He found out where Kelsey works. He has her work emails. He has texts between Brandon and..." He trailed off. I waited. "A few other women," Dad finally said. I didn't blink. "So you got scammed by the fixer you hired to erase the mess you made after I told the truth about a baby you lied about?" No one spoke. I walked over to the table and pulled out the folder. Not that folder, a new one. They tensed. I opened it. Inside were neatly organized documents, receipts, contracts, digital prints, and a timeline. Because while they were busy hiding, scheming, and pretending I'd been working. Quietly, methodically. The Curtis guy, I'd already heard of him. He wasn't just a shady fixer. He was part of a shell network of scammers who preyed on desperate people trying to bury family scandals. Blackmail, identity theft, financial fraud. He'd been part of 2 civil suits in other states, both settled quietly. I'd spent the last 3 weeks gathering everything. With my tech background, I was able to trace some of the IPs tied to the emails he'd sent, built a little trap for him. A fake email chain with fake documents embedded with a digital tracker. He opened it. I had his location. I had his metadata. I had everything. And now I had them. "What is that, Dad?" asked, voice low. "Insurance," I said. "This folder contains everything you just told me plus everything you didn't." Brandon paled. "You recorded us?" "No," I said. "But I knew someone like Curtis wouldn't operate alone, and I knew you'd show up eventually. You always come crawling back when it gets messy." Dad took a step forward. "So what? You're going to help us?" I looked at each of them one by one. "No," I said. Kelsey gasped. "But I'm going to help myself," I continued. "Because Curtis didn't just threaten you. He threatened me. My name's on the paternity test. My house was part of this drama. My career could be affected if this goes public, and I don't trust any of you not to throw me under the bus if it saves your skin." "So what do you want?" Brandon asked, arms crossed. "Money." I laughed once, cold and sharp. "No," I said. "I want justice. Real justice. Not just for me, but for every time you made me feel like less. Every time you used me, mocked me, ignored me. For every backhanded comment, every silent expectation, every moment, I was treated like the family safety net." They said nothing. I leaned forward. "I'm going to expose Curtis. Publicly, legally. I have the data. I have the proof. But I'm not doing it quietly. I'm going to trace everything back. Every email, every wire transfer, every name he used. I'm going to build a case so airtight, it'll choke him." Dad looked pale. "If you do that, we'll be implicated." I nodded slowly. "Yes, you will." Kelsey's voice cracked. "Please, Darren, if this goes public, I could lose my job." Brandon deserves to be exposed," I snapped. "But you helped him. You stood next to him when he laughed in my face. You took part in humiliating me in front of the entire family. And then you tried to bury the truth to protect your image. So forgive me if I don't shed a tear." She looked like she might cry, and for once I didn't care. Dad stepped forward, eyes pleading. "There has to be another way." "There is," I said. "And that's why I haven't gone to the police yet." He blinked. "What do you mean?" I said slowly, "that I have a plan. A better one." They watched me silent. "You wanted to take something from me," I said. "Now I'm going to take something from you." Brandon scoffed. "What?" "The family name. The last turkey leg." "No," I said. I picked up the folder, snapped it shut, and smiled. "I'm going to take your legacy." My plan didn't hinge on rage or theatrics. No fire, no shouting, no trashing reputations in public just for the spectacle. What I wanted was precision. A clean, undeniable dismantling of everything they'd tried to build on my back. After they left my house that day, Brandon still blustering, Kelsey sniffling into her sleeve, and Dad looking like a man trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. I sat at my desk. Max curled up beside me and pulled up everything I'd gathered so far. The folder wasn't just insurance anymore, it was a weapon. I had documents, bank transfers from Dad's account to Curtis's front company screenshots of email exchanges that referenced me by name. Brandon actually referred to me as the wild card they'd contained Sue. There were messages from Curtis implying that once the forged documents were distributed, I'd be publicly discredited as bitter and unstable. They were going to spin it, so I looked like the vengeful, jealous brother attacking a young family out of spite, all because I dared to speak the truth. Not anymore. I called a friend of mine from college, Maya. She worked at a mid-sized cybersecurity firm that occasionally partnered with law enforcement on digital fraud investigations. We weren't super close, but we kept in touch over the years through tech meetups and online forums. I sent her a message with a redacted version of what I had. Her reply came within minutes. "Darren, this guy's on our radar. I can loop in the team. Don't post anything public yet. Let us build the case." For the next 4 weeks, I became the quiet architect of their collapse. Maya's team worked fast. They traced Curtis's shell companies to 2 other active fraud cases. They found internal inconsistencies in the falsified lab reports he'd used in other blackmail schemes. They even uncovered audio from a recorded call with another victim in which Curtis bragged about taking some idiot tech bro's house away to save his client's reputation. That idiot tech bro was me. We compiled everything. It wasn't just enough to burn Curtis. I wanted it to ripple. But revenge isn't just about hitting back. It's about timing. So I waited. I waited until Thanksgiving. The same holiday I hadn't been invited to last year. The one where Brandon and Kelsey posted that smug photo. Her carving the turkey, him holding the baby, my parents smiling like nothing had ever happened. This year, things would be different. I didn't show up unannounced. That would have been dramatic. Instead, I called my mom 2 days before. First time we'd spoken in nearly a year. "Darren," she said, breathless. "I wasn't sure you'd ever call again. I wanted to see how everyone's doing," I said casually. "It's been a long year." She softened. "It has. I know things got out of hand. Your father feels terrible. Brandon's still figuring things out. Kelsey's trying to co-parent peacefully." "And what about you?" I asked. "I just want the family whole again," she whispered. There it was. I told her I'd think about coming. She nearly cried. Thanksgiving Day, I put Max in the car, drove to my parents' house, and parked 2 houses down. I wasn't going inside. I wasn't hugging anyone. But I had something to deliver. A process server pulled up behind me. I handed him the sealed packets. One for each person, Dad, Brandon, and Kelsey. Inside, a formal civil complaint. Curtis had been arrested 2 days prior in a coordinated sting, and my statements, along with the documented evidence, were part of the prosecution's file. But I had also filed a civil suit for defamation conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted theft of property. They weren't just morally guilty, they were legally vulnerable. The process server, a guy named Ted, who looked like he'd been doing this for 20 years, chuckled when he saw the names. "Family drama?" he asked. "You have no idea," I said. He walked up the driveway, rang the doorbell, and handed the envelopes to each of them one by one. I watched from the car. Brandon turned red. Kelsey's jaw dropped. My dad just sagged into the doorframe like someone had deflated him. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't need to. My statement had already been made. The fallout came fast. Brandon tried to file a counterclaim saying the paternity test was emotional abuse. It was dismissed immediately. Kelsey, now working for a nonprofit, was placed on temporary leave pending review of her involvement in the Curtis scheme. She wasn't fired, but her public record was marked by the complaint. My father, who had always cared more about reputation than reflection, was forced to resign from the local housing board, a position he'd held for 10 years. The scandal made it into a few local newsletters, the kind read by suburban moms and HOA tyrants, enough to stain him without ruining him. And me, I thrived. The tech startup I joined after the park incident, it took off. Within 6 months, I'd led the team through a major product launch that caught the attention of 2 investment firms. I got a bonus larger than my entire annual income the year before. Max and I moved to a slightly larger house just outside the city, a place with more trails, a better yard, and a detached office where I could code and write without distraction. I leased out the old house using the rent to fund a small side project. A tech nonprofit that offered free digital security audits for people vulnerable to online blackmail and fraud. I never spoke to Brandon again. Kelsey sent one email apologizing mostly for how things looked, not how they were. I never replied. My mom reached out a few months later. She said she missed me, that she'd always loved me, that she wished things had gone differently. I believe her, but I didn't go back. Forgiveness isn't the same as access. And Dad? He sent me a letter. No apology, just a single sentence. "You were always too smart for your own good." Maybe, but being smart wasn't the problem. Letting it slide for 30 years was. Now I don't let anything slide because the truth is, they never wanted peace. They wanted compliance. And I gave them clarity instead. In the end, I didn't burn bridges. I just built them a better house on the other side of the river. And I didn't give them the keys. They thought I was the spare son with a dog. Turns out I was the storm they never saw coming.